We are here today to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is archetypes. Might sound kind of odd, I know. Might sound like somebody who says they're excited to do math or chemistry, but hopefully by the end of this video you'll have a good understanding, or at least a better understanding of what archetypes are, maybe a window into the world and how fascinating they are and how much room for growth and learning and self-discovery there is available in the realm of archetypes by the end of this video. For those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Stacey Couch. My website is wildgratitude.com. And for those of you who have been following through on these videos and watching them, thanks for joining me again. I'm excited to have you here. I also am really excited about how much of a movement there is going on in the workplace these days. So many people seem to be interested in what their strengths are and knowing more about who they are so that they can bring that to the workplace. We used to be really focused at work on our weaknesses. We try to figure out what we're doing wrong and be able to mend those or adapt those or change those so that we could be better performers at the workplace. A lot of research has been done and people are starting to learn and discover that it's actually not helpful. You're not going to increase someone's productivity very much by strengthening their weaknesses. You're going to increase productivity by honing in on what people's strengths are and then putting them in the position or having them be in a workplace that is amiable or aligns with their strengths. And we are finding that in ourselves. It's not very fun to go to work and be someone who you're not and work a job that just doesn't bring out the best in you, where you feel like you're constantly making up for what you don't have. And so ways that we're learning, we have lots of great tools out there that help us discover what we are good at, what our skills are, and what our preferences are as well. And do we prefer to have a quiet work environment or a loud one with lots of things going on? These are all good things to know as we're trying to find a workplace, a company, a position that fits who we are and brings out the best in us. And the ways that we have available to us, there's so many great tools out there, and I have to say I've used a lot of them throughout the years. There's a lot of great tools out there that help us learn these things, and these are different personality tests, right? So we have Myers-Briggs, that's the most well-known. We also have the DISC profile, that's capital D, capital I, S, and C profile. We have social styles. A lot of people, there's different names for it, but social styles in the workplace. We have leadership agility that tests and rates where you are on the scale of different leaders. We also have the predictive index. We have insight inventory. I'm going to grab my note, and the strengths finder. Let me just grab my notes here. So a lot of different ways. All of these tests I actually recommend. I've taken all of them myself, and I've received at least a snippet of great insight, if not a great whole picture that's really helped me shift and adapt who I am and how I am in a work environment. So these are all really great. Like I said, I absolutely recommend them. I'm very grateful to the people who have developed these systems and who teach them and help others learn about themselves. Self-discovery is always an awesome thing, right? The trouble with all of these is that when we go to, I've explained who I am. I know what my preferences are now, and I know what my personality traits are. I know what I am likely to do in a stressful situation. I know what my skills are, talents are, all of those kind of things. I can write down on paper and explain to someone what I'm good at and how I respond and perform in various situations. That's all well and good. We understand that. We have a great explanation of that. But then when you want to take that into the spiritual practice, then when you want to take that into deeper contemplation, into prayer, into meditation, there really isn't anywhere to go with it. And I can speak at this from experience. Because, I know what my preferences are. I know what my tendencies are. But why do I do those things? And that's where archetypes comes in. But we're going to stop there for a moment and backtrack. I want to talk a little bit more about all these personality and profile tests that are available, because I want, for those of you that either aren't familiar with them or those of you that are, I want you just to really kind of get into the juice of what these personality tests do, so that you can see when I go to contrast that with the archetypal work where the difference is. So when we're doing a personality test, we're looking to measure and quantify given traits and put ourselves along a scale, see where we fall along a given scale. So some of these kind of traits would be dominance. So are you indirect or direct? Are you amiable and go along to get along, or are you really dominant? Extroversion versus introversion. It's also can be called reserved versus outgoing. These are the big ones. Most people understand extroversion and introversion. And extroversion is really highly prized and valued in our society. If you are an introvert and you know that about yourself, I highly recommend the book Quiet. I think her name is Susan Cain, the author. Really great book, talking about how there are a lot of successful introverts in the world, and how is professionally, and how introversion is actually a really powerful skill to have. So just so you know, introversion is not weak or is not a weakness, especially in terms of the professional world or success. Okay, other things are patience, or are you urgent or steady? Do you need to get things done right away, or are you a driver and you just going for the finish line constantly, or are you a steady paced person that you just really you get there when you get there, the tortoise versus the hare, right? All right, another one is formality. So structure, are you really unstructured person? Do you have a messy desk? Do you keep a messy house? Or are you an incredibly precise person? Am I going to go in your closet and find that all of your clothes are lined up in rainbow order? So we've got all the red clothes here, all the orange clothes here, that kind of thing. That would be a very precise person, a very formal or structured person. Other traits that these tests measure and look at are influence, compliance, intuitive versus sensing, or thinking versus feeling. So looking at that left side of the brain versus the right side of the brain. That's another piece of it, left brain or right brain. So left brain is really analytical, logical, and right brain is very intuitive and spontaneous, non-rational. I think that when people learn about archetypes, in the sense that I'm talking about, but I'm looking at archetypes within the human experience, so human archetypes. And when people hear about what these are, so when I start to name off archetypes, queen, thief, bully, victim, prostitute, martyr, angel, caretaker, sage, nun, monk. When I start to explain and give names of archetypes, I think people automatically jump to these personality profiles, to personality traits. They automatically jump to gifts and strengths. And they automatically think about weaknesses as well. So they start to see archetypes in terms of weaknesses and strengths and personality traits. There is that component in archetypes, but that is only a component of archetypes. And I think that's the piece where people get lost, or where they don't realize there's so much more richness when we're looking at archetypes. Because when we're looking at personality traits, well, I'm extroverted. Well, great. Now, why are you extroverted? What determines that? What motivates your extroversion? Well, you can't get further into that question. Now, when you say, I am, in terms of archetypes, you say, I am an artist. Now, you say, well, what motivates you to do art? Well, when you look at the artist, you're looking at the whole span of artists across all of creation. So not only are you looking at Da Vinci or Mozart or Shakespeare or any of the great writers or musicians or artists over time, you're also looking at art of the divine. So you're looking at art in nature, whereas nature isn't an artist. And where does that creative force come from? So you're looking at the creative force of the universe and identifying that you are a part of that creative force of the universe by saying, I have the artist archetype as one of my archetypes. So not only are you saying, well, I have one of my weaknesses with the artist archetype is that I can kind of get worried about being a starving artist, and that can keep me from doing my art. I get really concerned about what other people think, and that's why I don't put my art out there. So you can identify weaknesses for sure. You can also identify strengths in that I can bring inspiration and create the creative force into the world and put that into form, be it music, be it painting, drawing, writing. And I can put that into form so that it inspires others. Great, there's a strength. And then if we look at personality traits, well, artists are often unstructured. They're often, here and there, they're known for not being very precise or organized, or that would be some personality traits we may attribute to the artist archetype. But why is the artist compelled to work in that way? Well, what does that tell us about creation? That tells us about that the creative forces of the universe are not necessarily logical or precise or structured. That tells us that the creative forces of the universe, that there's this compelling urge to create that just comes from within, and that is part of the artist archetype. And the way that we can understand more about the artist archetype is to go and look at artists over time, to meet other artists, to look at the field of artists and see what their entire experience is. So not only does it help us understand more about who we are and how we operate, it also connects us to the larger field of humanity, a larger group, a larger community of people in the current day, but also over history. And that brings us to the great cosmic truth that even stardust is in our being, that every molecule that is in our body is a part of the universe, and it connects us to the whole. So archetypes actually become a spiritual experience in working with them. They connect us to the whole. They connect us to mythology. So one thing I love to do when working with archetypes is to start to look at mythologies surrounding those archetypes, and also go and read memoirs of other people who have been in that archetype. So if you have the nun archetype, going and reading works by Saint Teresa of Avila is fantastic. It's nourishing. There's something that not logically, but non-rationally fills your soul. You can't get that going and reading about some other person's experience of being an extrovert. I mean, you can learn some things and intellectualize some things and understand more about the way you do the things you do, but that why comes welling up from that passion, that urge to do things the way you do, comes in exploring the realm of a particular archetype that you identify with. And you start to understand that motivation. And archetypes aren't just a voice in our head that's talking to us, or aren't 12 voices in our heads that are talking to us. Archetypes they're like a tapestry. Really, just like you would never choose one word to explain who you are. You would never say, I'm an introvert, and leave it at that. You may sit with that for a time, but you're not going to leave it at that. You would not just take one archetype and explain that as who you are. There's a whole tapestry of them, and they come up and move and interact and interplay within you, and then those archetypes within you do the same with others. So as you can see, there's this whole world, this whole realm that opens up just with learning one archetype. So when we look at, I am a sensing person, that's one of my Myers-Briggs traits. Well, does that really connect on a soul level with what you're here to do? Does that help you know more about what you're here to fulfill in this lifetime? It just tells you, well, that's just the way I am, right? With archetype, with, say, the mother archetype, when you come into, okay, that is my archetype, you start to understand more of what you have to offer the world. what you came here to do, your soul's purpose, your soul's gifts, not just talents and strengths that, well, I type really fast. Not that kind of gift, but the kind of gift of that you are able to offer support and nurturing to people. You don't have to have children to have the mother archetype. You just have to, like actual birth or genetic children. You can have adopted children. That you help foster, help bring up in the world, and that ability to be there and offer that nurturing to others in your community is a service, and you start to learn what you're here to do and how your soul is moving out and expressing in the world. So absolutely different, right, than just a straight personality trait or behavior trend that you have. Archetypes explain those things, but they are not. They are not absolutely only those things. Archetypes help us know more about our soul's purpose and about what we are here to birth into the world, what our unique divine gifts are in the world. They help us connect in with our divinity. So I've gone on for longer than I expected, but I hope that helps you view and get a world a window in to the difference between learning what your archetypes are and working with archetypes. It's a lifelong path, and learning your personality traits. Personality traits, you can spend a few months or even a few years here and there with them, but then you're kind of like, oh, okay, till you find the next test with the next set of personality traits or strengths, and you learn a little bit more. Whereas when you learn the archetype, you get this whole package of information that you can constantly dig up and dig through, learning mythology, reading memoirs, meeting other people current day who have the same archetype, watching how it moves in movies and TV and politics and world affairs. It's fascinating. It's everywhere, all around us. So yeah, huge field, and thus the reason why I'm absolutely fascinated with it, because it's a continual source of learning. One of my strengths is learner. Actually, my first strength is learner. So, and one of my archetypes is student. So there you go. So it just becomes this constant source of inspiration and wisdom for me. So I'm really excited to have shared just a little bit of this with you today. I'm going to have a whole series of videos on this. In the next video, I'm going to talk about ways that you can start to learn what your archetypes might be, some key questions to dive into in learning your archetypes, and lots of resources on my website. I'm continuing to grow resources about archetypes on my blog, as well as offering online classes about different archetypes. So definitely check out my website, wildgratitude.com, and you'll be able to go there and learn a lot more. I also work with people on an individual basis, so I'm really excited to share this with you, obviously, and thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you again. Take care.